All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Around the Bonfire. We're very excited to have you tonight. We've been a bit busy with where we are right now with the things that we're cooking up for our product camp listeners and our product camp people who attend our workshops now. So stay tuned for that. But we just like to let you know that we want to be able to jumpstart again our podcast. And we are very excited today with our special guest will talk to us about product. Before that, I'd like to introduce our guest producer, Patrick, who will be helping us with our podcast, and obviously my co-host, JD, part of Product Hack.
Hi guys, welcome. It's been a while, no? As you see, we've been revamping things. We've been trying out new things, and we have some kind of production now. But what I'm most excited about would be our guest for tonight. Very a big fan of this guy. Been a supporter of the startup industry, but of product camp as well. No. So without further ado, wanted to welcome our guest tonight, the CEO of Swarm, Dexter. Hi, Dex.
Hello. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, yeah, it's been a long time, no? We believe ito yung second try natin to try to do a podcast. But yeah, we know you're busy, but thanks for giving us the time.
I've
First
heard
off,
you.
I guess,
I heard you guys are busy too. So
aren't we all? But first off, Dex, before we start, I saw kanina during our intro, you're drinking something. Can you share? What's that?
oh, it's a it's a decaf espresso. So it's
Did
uh it's
you?
my it's my morning routine. It's getting me in the mood. I know that there's lo-fi music as well, but so that way we're relaxed and can have a bonfire conversation with some warm drinks around.
Right, right. Did you brew it?
I let that little machine over there do it. Sorry,
Oh,
I'm not that hipster. I don't grind my own beans and use the whole funnel. It's where I draw the line.
got it. But yeah, super excited for our conversation, Dex. When we were running through the questions earlier, like I'm so excited to hear about the answers that you'll give. And right off the bat, we're not jumping into of course, the startup scene kaagad or your startup experience, but we're taking a step back first. We want to know, Dex, maybe you could start or do a quick intro. How did you start your career, given you're a seasoned veteran na in the industry? Were you a founder baka agad, or did you work for a company first?
No and no. Interestingly, so I worked in government. People in the see, dun, dun, dun. I I grew up in San Francisco, and the track that I was on was I focused on policy, specifically labor economics and workforce policy. But I was also involved with politics. So people actually, I was preparing to run for office. And what happened in 20, see, you don't even know this.
Yeah.
The secret life of
Yeah.
Dexter Ligot Gordon,
I'm shocked.
confessions. What happened was, and it was kind of, I think, actually relevant to my experience right now. I was chief of staff for a politician in San Francisco, and he was running to be the mayor. And I came to the realization that change happens. The change that is pursued is done for headline, right? And the reason why I wanted to get into policy is because I wanted to make, you know, systemic change. I wanted to change how people made a living, how they went to school, how they connected what they learned, and how they earn. But I realized that 80% of government is the facade of politics, whether or
Mhm.
not the solutions really work. And before I got like knee deep in, because if my person won, I would be at the core of like San Francisco politics, and I'd have to do battle for ideas that I had to reflect. Did I really believe in this? So before things got warm, before things got too sticky, I decided to opt out and just reflect. And I'm Filipino, in spite all of my appearances. So I came to the Philippines, spent time with my family, and just chilled out, reflected. This is 2011, 2012.
Hmm.
So, in other words, my journey as a founder started with self reflection and kind of a
Mhm.
fundamental commitment to wanting to solve problems.
Whoa, a lot to unpack there. Didn't know that you started in that, like, of all industries naman, no? Or of all areas, dun talaga. There's a parallel universe pala now, Dex, that you're, I don't know, maybe a senator or something by now.
Yeah, Gordon's in my last name, even though I'm not related. I so yeah,
Yeah.
there's more than, but like everyone in the US thinks that I'm like I ran for office, and everyone here like thinks of me as like a tech person from San Francisco. So it's an interesting identity I have.
Yeah, balancing that life. Ang galing, duality, no? I'm curious though, what was your course in college? Kung if that was your track.
Political economics. So
Ooh.
yeah, so observing,
So
doing what I was doing before,
got
building
it.
government
That's really,
policy, development, economics, so on and so forth.
wow, all right. So it was really the plan. So I guess a good segue to our next question. How did you find yourself? Aside from the self-reflection and all, how did you find yourself in the startup world? I mean, I believe like you can join in a big tech company if you want change, right? But how did you end up doing your own startup?
So back in 2011, 2012, I met up with a friend who I went to college with. His name's Paul Rivera. And he was running a call center at the time. He co-owned and was running a call center. And essentially together we saw that the economy was booming in the Philippines. And one of the problems that was created is that job matching was really a mess. There's only really like, things like Craigslist and listing sites that facilitated job matching, and we felt that we could do it better. We went through a few pivots, but what ended up scaling is when we started to use AI to match people in jobs, and that kind of boomed. Because with AI you can personalize the experience of job search, which is very difficult to do with the other listing sites. So I think like my foray into tech really was a commitment to this problem of how do we connect people and opportunity, people and jobs? How do we make it more equitable? How do we create more opportunity and expose people to more opportunity and to grab that? So I think fundamentally, like my career before and my career now has largely been kind of anchored on this mission to connect people with work. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Interesting. Okay, so maybe we could circle back into that later. But before that, Dino, any follow up questions? I guess on that.
Well, I'm still in shock about the running for senator bit, no? But that's I've known you for a long time, Dex, so that's still a surprise. But I think what I'd want to know more about is Swarm now, no? So where you started in Caliber, right? In the problems that you observed and the connections that you made in order to be able to deliver a type of product that solve an actual need, no? So when you related to Swarm, what do you feel were the events or observations that made you believe in building Swarm? So you saw shifts in Caliber, you saw certain dynamics, right? So now, what do you think happened that made you believe in building Swarm?
Well, something very fast. I mean, fascinating, devastating. Like we all know, in the last 3 years, this pandemic has really reshaped how work gets done, work gets done, and fundamentally people's relationship to work. There's three problems that I've really zoomed in on and saw firsthand kind of come to fruition. First is kind of what's obvious. The mode of work changed. It got decentralized, got pushed into people's homes. I mean, we're having this conversation right now from our homes with the setup that we set up because, the pandemic forced us to set up home offices. So the modality of work shifted. That's shift number one, problem number one. Shift number two was that people became isolated. right? People who, work fundamentally is highly associated with people's sense of community and identity. Who you work with and the experience of how you work with them, it's literally how we spend the most time working with our colleagues, right? So pushing that into people's homes was very isolating, right? And lastly, it exposed an underlying desire. And I don't think it was caused by the pandemic, but it was surfaced by the pandemic. People started to realize that they were creating value for other people and other people's mission and vision. So, like McKinsey called it the Great Resignation. Now they're calling it the Great Attrition. People fundamentally are looking for a sense of alignment and purpose and belonging. Right? So those three things, like work became global, it became remote. People started to feel isolated, and thirdly, wanted to align their sense of purpose. These are three tectonic shifts that were happening in the world that have reshaped people's relationship with work. So, what did it open up for Swarm specifically? I wanted to tackle this question. Well, if people did not feel like they belonged to the companies that they were working for, if they didn't want to create value for somebody else's vision, how might we enable them to pursue projects and work that's meaningful to them, to give them independence without them having to work alone? So I think, like everyone who's tried to solve this independent worker problem or this freelancer problem, immediately their business models go towards marketplace. But as an economist, what marketplaces function better when people compete against each other and when the thing that's being bought or sold, namely work, becomes commoditized. Well, does that sound appealing to you? To compete and to be commodified? No, right? So that's the problem that Swarm is solving. How might we enable people to find their tribe, find people who can support them, give them feedback, open opportunities for them, and to enhance the quality of their work, right?
Okay, cool. Okay, so all right, so I guess I'm curious to know, no, if you can tell us a bit about Swarm's products, like what were your focus areas during your initial build? Like, what were like, for example, if we talk about the first few months, what were you focused on building, and what were the insights that led to this type of build that you made?
Okay, so this is like upside down. So one of the things that I think that one of the key things that we made the commitment to, well, it's not one, it's actually a couple of things. First, we made the commitment to build Swarm with our community. You and JD are part of that community. You have been very proactive in giving us feedback and telling us how you want to do this. This is actually I didn't build Caliber this way. We got feedback, but we didn't build with our community, right? So we built a community very quickly, like 1,500. Like right now, back when we started, it was like just 400, right? So we wanted to build with our community. That's commitment number one. Commitment number two is to build incrementally and not focus on growth initially. We wanted to focus on understanding the mindset of people that we're trying to serve. So ultimately, the clients, startup founders who are trying to recruit freelancers, and the independent professionals themselves, the freelancers themselves. So this actually came with advice from one of our investors who led small and medium-sized business he built the team at Facebook and at Google very early on. He said, don't focus on growth initially. Focus on getting the product right and the engagement correct before you try to scale, right? That's the second commitment that actually was very different than Caliber, because the YC method is growth is the ultimate measure for whether or not you get product market fit. and whether or not your idea is viable. So rather than building up, we started to dig down with our founders, clients, and with our freelancers or talent. So doing that, we uncovered a lot. So we quickly launched what turned out to be a marketplace. I said that earlier marketplaces commodify, but we launched a marketplace to kind of test out the ideas of how might we put people together. We tested a lot of different things. When a new project was posted that required a team, we tried to assemble those teams on demand. And I think one of your questions later on is what are some of the assumptions that didn't pan out? That was one of them. It takes too much effort to introduce people, and it's too short time to create trust between people to work together on a project. So I think that being able to form teams quickly was an assumption that we disproved, right? So on the flip side of that, well, what did we know that we needed to do? We needed to cultivate these relationships and build trust among team members, among community members first, such that they can, when a new project comes along that requires multiple freelancers, those teams can team up and bid on projects correctly, right? So initially, we launched a very Wizard of Oz MVP marketplace to learn about how freelancers mobilize, how founders select, screen, what their expectations are for hiring freelancers. So that allowed us, we ran that for about 4 months. Now we're kind of in straight up build mode on our key learnings there. Like we started to sort out, well, what if it's not a commodified marketplace? Well, what is the alternative to that? And that's what we're kind of designing right now. If we don't want people to just compete against each other, how do we enable people to leverage their networks to support them to win projects and to excel at those projects? So those are the design challenges that we're going through right now. We have some strong opinions of what that needs to look like, and that's where we're kind of sprinting to push this out into the world so we can get additional feedback.
Got it. Very insightful, Dex. Parang ang daming nuggets of things, no? But we wanted to focus there. The product manager in me wanted to know the strategy behind this. What are the decisions that you made in building Swarm or even growing it, iterating the different features, right? That has made the biggest impact in your growth right now?
Yeah, to kind of tease out like a part of my previous answer, it's specifically working with our community to be able to build the product itself. So our product in and of itself are going to rely on our community to produce those network effects, right? So kind of from a meta point of view or an inception point of view, involving our community in building the product that creates opportunity for them is creating a very motivated core that when we start to launch, when we start to enable folks to leverage their networks, they can suck in the people that they know could benefit from this, right? So genuinely and authentically building relationships with people, getting feedback, understanding what pain people face and what aspirations that they have, building the product towards that was our commitment. So building with our community is a slower process. Oh my gosh, it's like, so there are practical implications to this, huh? Because as of this taping, there's an impending global recession. There is a slowdown in raising money. There is a hesitation for investors to back ideas that have no social proof. So the practical implications, there's risks involved with this that you have to plan for. Number one is that your investors have to be on board with this, at least critical mass of them. Critical mass of my investors are, in fact, they advised us to build with our community. So that is critical for any founder who's, trying to figure out initial product strategy. You have to have, if you're going to build with your community, you have to have enough runway to do so. You have to be able to have a team that can learn, and you have to have kind of the support of your investors such that, pivot to growth, because that in and of itself is going to be more harmful. If you're trying to build kind of incrementally build with your community, and then you switch out and try to pivot to growth immediately, that's really difficult to do, and it's probably going to cause more harm than just building for growth to begin with.
Got it. I know a handful of companies who would say that they're, oh, we want to know our customers' pain points. We want to know what makes them tick, etc. But I've experienced it. I want to say I've experienced it firsthand. How very customer driven you guys are with some of our works before, right? So I'm really glad and excited to see where you guys are going ahead, right? But I guess stepping back, and I know you've discussed about where you're going now, what are the things you're developing. But stepping back, when you were first thinking or even conceptualizing about Swarm, were there any assumptions that you initially had, or anything that you held a strong conviction about that right now don't hold water anymore?
I mentioned one, which was you could form teams on demand, and you can't, right? That was clear. I mean, it was just data. I think you all were a part of this. It takes time to form a team, and because there's trust that has to form, which is kind of a higher order motivation, and then you also have to build the workflows to work together, right? So pre-established teams are easier. Like, I think that you can't establish teams on demand. It's very difficult to do. You have to pre-establish them. You have to build the relationships first, build the processes first, such that when like an opportunity comes, those teams can form very quickly. I think that's the biggest one that we learned, and quite literally, like what you see it at like the legacy on the product now, which is there's a forum on each project that's posted as a space to discover people who are interested and also to discuss. It didn't happen. Okay, so we quickly observed that. Now we're kind of building on, well, if it doesn't happen on demand, then you kind of have to pre-bake, pre-build, and pre-cultivate those dynamics. We wouldn't have. I think we possibly could have made better assumptions, but I don't think that I don't think that it was we caught it quickly and early on, right? And if we didn't kind of go through this initial step, we wouldn't have discovered the trajectory we should have been, right? So yes, you can. So the thing about assumptions is, yes, you could always get lucky that your first assumption's correct, but that's not the whole point. The whole point is to establish a direction, learn, and then kind of tweak, right? Otherwise, if you just start with assumptions and you don't go through iterative processes to validate them, you're essentially like a sniper shooting in the dark or in dim light, right? So you essentially want to be in a position where you start a trajectory, get feedback. Don't build too much, like don't overinvest. That's why we did it Wizard of Oz, because it didn't require us to build a lot of software to test. Right, and now that we have a better idea of how to form teams, now we can actually build the product, leapfrog past our Wizard of Oz, and then now build kind of the product that we know that we need to build.
Got it. I guess as a follow-up question, Dex, you mentioned really gathering that data and knowing what's working or not. But how do you decide on the time frame? Where to pivot or not, or how long is it? Are we still going to push for it? Are we still going to persist, or oh no, it's time to pivot? How do you decide on that? What's the normal time frame for you?
Let me roll up my sleeves. So there's a difference, between early stage founder and kind of mature company, but on a discovery team. Okay. I'll answer it from both points of view. Okay. As an early stage founder and an early team, you have to perfect is the enemy of done, right? So you have to be able to gather enough information to make your next round of assumptions. You're not trying to disprove precisely your initial hypothesis. You should not have your expectation is not exhaustive data. Okay, your expectation is to gather enough insights
Mhm.
based on your initial hypothesis to make better assumptions. Okay, the reason why is because exhaustive data sets take time, and early stage startups typically don't have time.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's essentially like, and I had to go through this with my team. It's like, okay, what did we learn? Let's analyze this. Now let's make better assumptions, right? For some of my team members, it was a little difficult because it's like, well, shouldn't we try to gather more data? I was like, no. we should use what we have. I think we have enough qualitative information to be able to understand the contours, and what we should do is get varying opinions, not exhaustive data. Okay, so that we can, again, your goal is not to be super precise, but to tweak. Okay, okay. So that's different than if you're on a discovery team on a mature product. Why? Because typically you'll have more users. You can run A/B tests, and you can run kind of more quantitative analysis alongside your user research, right? Or alongside your qualitative studies. So on discovery teams for larger companies, mature products, you can be more, the nature of experiments are more quantitative in nature. You have that possibility, and then you can run these kind of sequentially, right? And I'm sorry, longitudinally. It's You don't have that kind of latitude in an early stage startup. Okay? So two different points of view. Both are valid, but the primary difference is you don't have time to be exhaustive when you're in an early stage. So you have to create a very quick feedback loop to tweak on your ideas to form better assumptions, your next round of assumptions.
Got it. So really differs on the in terms of the stage you are in. If you're an early stage startup, or well, basically if you have runway or not. Okay,
Yeah.
glad that you pointed out, Dex, and thanks for sharing that with all the honesty, right? Dino.
Yeah, and I think what I got from what Dex mentioned is validation takes various processes to be able to reach another set of validations. Right? And I think that's important to note because you can't just be right first. It's important that you get to the next steps, not necessarily just being right at the start and saying that okay, this is what you'll build on. Right? It's a lot of rights to be able to get to where you need to be. So okay, thank you, Dex, for that. So I guess we want to be able to know. So where do you see Swarm in the next year? What are you most excited about, without teasing too much into your specific product roadmap?
I think the, the thing that I'm most excited about is manifesting what community and helping each other looks like in software, right? So I think that there's huge opportunities both to facilitate those relationships with people that you know in the real world, build those connections with people that you'd meet on the platform, and for those interactions to ask for help, provide help, reciprocating help, to turn into data, right? That's what I'm excited about. So community for me, like social media right now, Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn to a certain degree, but a lesser degree, they enable people to create profiles, content, and get engagement. In other words, they're built to help people show off, right? They're built for people to portray the best versions of themselves. I believe community helps solve the opposite problem. That community helps you when you need it the most, right? So you don't have to step up with the best version of yourself. We want to be the place when you run into problems, you can send up a signal and get help from your community. And you can reciprocate that with revenue sharing, with reputation. But that's what I believe the difference between social media is and a community. And that's what I think we're going to prove out in the next year. What that looks like, sign up for Swarm. No, you'll find out soon.
All right. A good tease naman. A good mix of of detail and surprise. All right. So I think what trends. So I think there are a lot of things that you see and I feel that the vision that you've portrayed in spotting opportunities in Caliber as well as in Swarm is very evident. No? Now I want you to put on your I don't know forecasting hat and then what trends are you seeing in the Philippines or in Southeast Asia that you are curiously following? So you mentioned earlier, and it's apparent that your love for community is something that you want to emanate with the products that you create, right? So just wanted to pick your brain and try to see what trends are you seeing in the Philippines or in Southeast Asia that you might be curiously following.
Yeah. Okay. So one of is general, and then two are kind of related to the space that I'm in. The first one is something that's top of mind for most of the world right now: is what is the implication of Web3 decentralization on the distribution and organization of work? I think that's a very fascinating problem. I am extremely cautious of what happens because like we're going through crypto winter as of this recording, and you also see a lot of bad behavior, right? Essentially, when you turn over decision making to smart contracts and rules, it's very prone to exploitation. So I think that's I think that exploitative, the bad behavior is very evident right now, which is preventing faster innovation. Nonetheless, the way in which Web3 decentralization, the potential for DAOs, I think is groundbreaking and fundamental. Like as the we figure out how to regulate bad behavior more, as we figure out how to create more trust in these environments and the regulatory frameworks that get introduced. I think what that eventuality is very exciting. I think it's going to have implications for how people own property, how they how work is distributed and assigned, how it's rewarded, people's ability to earn upside as freelancers. I think that's a space that I'm following very closely. Okay, the reason why the Philippines and Southeast Asia, most I don't know if most people in tech or like the general population knows this, but the Philippines is seen as one of the global hotspots for Web3, NFTs, and crypto. And Paul Rivera actually used to convene these crypto friends dinners in 2016, 2017 during the last boom. And then Ron Hose had onboarded a lot of Filipinos into crypto with coins.ph. So the kind of mass market where and then the whole like YGG, and I know that there's a lot of issues right now with Axie, but the awareness for crypto and exposure and onboarding into the fundamentals of Web3, the Philippines is right up there with like in the world, right? Again, there's a lot of exploitation, there's a lot of bad behavior, but I do think that there's a lot of future potential. And now that I think we're kind of leapfrogging a lot of existing systems. I think we're a bit more advanced in terms of crypto awareness, how it works, being onboarded under crypto wallets. There's a higher penetration here than in most places in the world. So there's actually investor interest here, and here and in Southeast Asia. But Philippines, interestingly, is punching above its weight class when it comes to Web3 and crypto. So that's like one. Okay. So the other two, I think, are related to the workspace and the specifically the credentialing space. So also related to Web3. So I'm of the firm opinion that what you do and what you can demonstrate means more than the brand of your school or the brand of where you worked. Okay. So the way in which I hire is probably radical. at Caliber and even now, I don't. If you're able to pass our exam, if you're able to pass our case studies, we don't care if you graduated college. We don't care if you know where you worked. We care about what skills you can demonstrate, how quickly you learn, and your synergy with the team. So I believe, I think now you can see maybe with why it might be important for Swarm. If the workforce now for tech freelancers is global, you won't know what the best university in Nigeria is, right? You won't know what the best tech company in the Philippines is. So having those signals, those brands in your resume don't matter as much. In fact, how do you prove to someone in the valley that you can do this job? So being able to create demonstration driven or performance driven credentials or community driven credentials is something that I'm very interested in. So how do you enable people to demonstrate what they can do, when they come from far-flung places in the world? Let me tell you a story. You might have missed this, but I said that we built Caliber, my first company, that used AI to match people with jobs in 2012. Okay. In 2012, the Philippines didn't have any advanced degrees in AI. In fact, they just launched the first one this year, a couple of weeks ago. In 2012, there were no open source projects or off-the-shelf solutions for matching. I mean, it's kind of a common use case now, but back then, no way, right? So, well, who do you hire to build your AI machine? your AI-driven, your recommendations machine. We ended up hiring somebody who, his name's Ivan, AIVIN. It's a pun intended, I guess. And he was an astrophysicist, and he learned, he taught himself Python and enough, and he taught himself kind of enough of the AI modeling techniques in order to build the recommendations engine that we needed. So we couldn't rely on the traditional signals, where you went to school, what jobs we've held before, in order to hire him. We had to invent our own way. So these are called credentials in kind of academic speak. They're called signals in kind of tech speak, in like marketplace speak. But I'm very fascinated with this space. I'm experimenting actively in this space, and I think actually Web3 is also opening up use cases for people to share these credentials and make them portable across multiple platforms, because now you own your credentials and make it portable. So I think, I can go on, but those are kind of two of the things that are very interesting to me right now. So.
Well, okay. You mentioned Web3, so parang we can also go on and on about those things, but we would digress now. But so I guess we would like to probably end the show with a question from Pats. Since the show is for people who want to start their careers in product management by providing access to people who have been there and done that, can probably give the best advice for people who are looking to start their career or transition into a career in product management. So Pat's here would be able to probably give a question to Dex to represent the audience. No? So go ahead, Pats.
Yun. Thanks, Dino. So hi Dex. I'm Pat. So yeah, before anything else, I'm just really glad that I'm here and you're our first guest during my first appearance here in the Bonfire. So yeah, I'm really excited. So yeah, just bouncing off with what you said about credentials. I'm curious, if you were a fresh graduate today and you wanted to get into the tech industry, how would you go about that?
It's a good question. So here in the Philippines specifically, tech is going through a renaissance. Okay, and specifically, tech companies here are attracting foreign capital, foreign investors from tier one venture capitalists. I know that doesn't sound exciting, but it is fundamentally groundbreaking. And the reason why is this is because along with that money, they're recruiting people from abroad, like world-class executives who are coming here and building teams and expanding teams that's now going to create a ton of opportunity for young Filipinos to get product jobs and get trained by global talent, by global leadership. Okay. And I had to do that myself, like as a local startup, recruit Valley-based mentors and we had to build the internal training ecosystem at Caliber in order to do that. So there's a ton of jobs that are opening up in design, certainly in software development, and in product management. The reason why I spend as much time helping you all out as much product camp as much is because the hardest position to train for is product management, right? And while right now Swarm is still early on, we want to be as helpful as we can just with our time to open up those opportunities for people to train. So because product management, it cross-sects very different skill sets. You're engaged with, like, you have to understand the market and being able to launch your feature or set of features or your product into a market in the context of how the market operates, so that you have to be kind of a mini MBA. You have to be able to guide engineers and tell them what to do. So there's a technical project management element to it. And then you have to be like to communicate, get buy-in, run experiments, use data to be able to make decisions, right? So there's kind of, you're like a mini executive. So I know that, like, I subscribe, or like typically the types of teams I pull together, product managers end up becoming mini CEOs, right? In some companies, they're business analysts. In other companies, they're more technical program managers. I kind of take the view that it's not a standard view, but typically the types of project teams I create, the product owner, the product manager is like the mini CEO, right? So to be very practical, there's a lot of internships that I would apply for as before you graduate. They're opening up in design, product management, and engineering. It's much more competitive now. There's, tech companies are now fighting for local talent. So there's more opportunity if you have these kinds of skills to be able to get opportunities like this. You have foreign companies who are putting up offices here that are tech driven, like Canva. You have, globally funded startups like Kumu and Great Deals and PDAX and others that are really building the groundswell here. So there's a lot of opportunity. I would apply for an internship first, and then kind of grow from there.
Whew. That was a hell of a conversation with you, Dex. But thank you as always. You're very gracious with your time and support, not just to us, not just the product camp, but to the whole startup community. I know how much you've been helping us, and I can only imagine the amount of work and the amount of support you're giving to the other communities, especially those that are in Swarm. And we are a firm believer helping tech or leveraging tech to create meaningful products. And we see Swarm as one of the lampposts, as the lighthouse leading that charge. So we're very
sure. Oh no.
no, we believe you, and we support the vision of Swarm. As always, Dex, thanks so much for your time, for your support. And I guess as an ending, where can our listeners, our viewers connect to you or reach you?
So very easily, I'm Dexter at swarm.work. First name at swarm.work. And then if you want to sign up, it's https swarm.work. You'll see how quickly our product's going to change in the next couple of months. It's kind of like we've been studying, and now it's like boom, boom, boom. We're launching. So I'm just trying to make sure that, like, my my engineers don't have aneurysms before we get to the end. But it's such a pleasure to talk to you both. I've listened to your podcast. Thank you for not making me speak in pure Tagalog. I think this is just a privilege to be here.
Thanks so much, Dex. And that's it. See you in
Thank
our
you.
next episode. And maybe, Dex, when you release your next features, we can have you on board again for another session.
Yeah, I would love to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dex.